The day started like any other for Dr. Elena Carter, a successful businesswoman known for her sharp mind and bold style. She had just wrapped up an important meeting in New York and was now heading back to Los Angeles on Flight 247. Dressed in a stunning outfit that blended traditional African prints with modern elegance, she walked through the bustling airport terminal with confidence. Her natural braids, adorned with delicate gold cuffs, caught the eyes of many passers-by. To Elena, this wasn't just fashion, it was a celebration of her heritage and identity. As she approached the gate, she handed over her first-class ticket to the attendant, expecting nothing out of the ordinary. But as soon as she stepped onto the plane, something felt off. A few passengers glanced at her curiously, their expressions ranging from mild curiosity to outright disapproval. At first, Elena brushed it off. She was used to standing out, whether in boardrooms or social settings. What she didn't expect, however, was what came next. A flight attendant approached her shortly after she settled into her seat. The woman's demeanor was polite but distant. "Excuse me, ma'am," she said, glancing at Elena's ticket. "Are you sure this is the correct boarding pass? There seems to be some confusion about your seating assignment." Elena frowned, puzzled. "No, there's no mistake," she replied calmly, holding up her ticket for confirmation. "This is my seat." The flight attendant hesitated, then forced a smile. "I see. Well, we're experiencing some issues with seating arrangements today. Would you mind moving to economy class? We can offer you a complimentary upgrade on your next flight." Elena stared at her, disbelief washing over her face. Was this really happening? She'd paid for a first-class ticket like everyone else around her. Why was she being singled out? Determined not to let frustration get the better of her, she responded firmly. "I'm sorry, but I won't be moving. I have every right to sit here." The tension grew thicker as more passengers began to notice the exchange. Some shifted uncomfortably in their seats, while others watched with quiet interest. The flight attendant, clearly unprepared for pushback, tried again. "Ma'am, please understand, it's for the comfort of all our passengers." "For the comfort of all passengers?" Elena repeated, raising an eyebrow. "Or just certain ones?" Her words hung in the air, sharp and pointed. The flight attendant flushed red but didn't back down. Instead, she muttered something about needing to check with her supervisor before walking away briskly. Elena sighed, leaning back in her seat. She knew this wasn't going to end well, but she refused to give in. This wasn't just about her. It was about challenging the assumptions people made based on appearances. Minutes later, the flight attendant returned, accompanied by a man who introduced himself as the lead crew member. He attempted to smooth things over, offering vague apologies and repeating the request for Elena to move. When she declined once again, he reluctantly called airport security. 2 officers arrived, their presence turning heads throughout the cabin. Passengers whispered among themselves, speculating about what was unfolding. "Ma'am, we're going to need you to come with us," one officer said, his tone firm but not unkind. Elena stood up slowly, her movements deliberate. She grabbed her carry-on bag and addressed the crowd directly. "Let me make one thing clear," she said, her voice steady and commanding. "I belong here just as much as anyone else does. If you think otherwise, that says more about you than it does about me." With that, she followed the officers off the plane, leaving behind a stunned audience. As she descended the jet bridge, she couldn't help but feel a mix of anger and sadness. Anger at the injustice of being treated differently because of how she looked, and sadness that such prejudice still existed in the world. Little did anyone know this incident would set the stage for something much bigger, a reckoning that would ripple far beyond the confines of that airplane. For now, though, Elena focused on staying composed. She knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. As Elena stepped off the plane, her head held high despite the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside her, a small crowd had gathered near the gate. Some passengers who had witnessed the scene were still milling about, whispering among themselves. Others simply stared, unsure of what to make of the situation. The 2 security officers escorted her away from the boarding area, their expressions neutral but tinged with discomfort. It was clear they weren't entirely convinced she deserved to be removed, yet protocol dictated they follow through. Just as Elena reached the edge of the terminal, a man in a crisp navy blue suit rushed toward her, his face pale and his steps hurried. He introduced himself as Gregory Thompson, the airline's regional director for customer relations. "Dr. Carter, please wait," he called out, his voice laced with urgency. Elena turned to face him, her arms crossed over her chest. She didn't say a word, letting the weight of the moment settle between them. I heard what happened," Gregory stammered, clearly flustered. "I want to assure you that this is not how we treat our valued customers. Please let me resolve this." Elena raised an eyebrow, her expression unreadable. "Valued customers?" she echoed, her tone calm but cutting. "Is that what I am? Or am I just someone whose appearance doesn't fit your idea of first class?" Gregory winced, visibly uncomfortable. "Ma'am, I understand if you're upset." "No, you don't," Elena interrupted, her voice firm but controlled. "You have no idea what it feels like to be judged before you even open your mouth, to be told you don't belong because of the way you look or dress. But here's the thing, I do belong. And not just on this flight, in this company." Gregory blinked, confusion flickering across his face. Before he could respond, Elena continued. "Did anyone tell you who I am? Did they mention that I own this airline?" The words hit him like a thunderclap. For a moment he froze, his mouth slightly agape. Then, as realization dawned, his eyes widened in shock. You own the airline?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Elena nodded, her gaze unwavering. "Yes, I do. My investment firm acquired it 6 months ago. I've been working quietly behind the scenes to reshape its culture and values. Clearly, there's still work to be done." Gregory stumbled backward, his mind racing. He had spent years climbing the corporate ladder at this airline, navigating politics and power plays to reach his current position. Yet now, standing before him was the person who ultimately held all the cards, and he hadn't even known her name until this very moment. I'm so sorry," he stammered, struggling to regain his composure. "This is unacceptable. Completely unacceptable. Let me fix this right away." But Elena wasn't interested in empty apologies. She studied him carefully, noting the beads of sweat forming on his forehead. "It's not about fixing this for me," she said. "What happened today isn't just my problem, it's yours. It's a reflection of something much deeper within this organization, something that needs to change." By now, other airline employees had gathered around, drawn by the commotion. They watched silently as Elena addressed Gregory, her presence commanding attention. Even the security officers lingered nearby, unsure whether to leave or stay. Word spread quickly among the staff, and soon whispers filled the air. "That's Dr. Carter, the one who bought the airline?" Meanwhile, news of the incident began to leak online. Passengers who had witnessed the altercation started sharing videos and photos on social media, tagging the airline's official accounts. Hashtags like Respect for Elena and First Class Bias began trending almost instantly. Commenters expressed outrage over the treatment Elena had received, while others shared their own stories of discrimination while traveling. Within hours, the story exploded across platforms, drawing international attention. Back at the terminal, Gregory scrambled to contain the damage. "Dr. Carter, please allow me to escort you to our headquarters," he pleaded. "We can discuss next steps and ensure this never happens again." Elena considered his offer for a moment. She knew this was an opportunity, a chance to turn a painful experience into a catalyst for meaningful change. Still, she wanted to make sure he understood the gravity of the situation. "Fine," she said finally. "But know this. I won't tolerate excuses or half measures. If you're serious about making things right, you'll need to prove it." With that, she followed Gregory to a waiting car, leaving behind a trail of stunned employees and curious onlookers. As they drove toward the airline's headquarters, Elena allowed herself a brief moment of reflection. She thought about the countless times she'd faced similar prejudice throughout her life. Moments when people had underestimated her or dismissed her based on preconceived notions. Each time she had risen above, using those experiences to fuel her determination to succeed. Now, sitting in the backseat of the car, she realized this incident wasn't just about her. It was about every black woman, every person of color, every individual who had ever been made to feel inferior because of their appearance. This was her chance to send a message, to show the world that success wasn't defined by fitting into someone else's mold. Success was about breaking barriers, challenging norms, and creating space for others to thrive. When they arrived at the sleek glass building that housed the airline's executive offices, Elena stepped out of the car with renewed resolve. Cameras flashed as reporters stationed outside caught wind of her arrival. She ignored them, focusing instead on the task ahead. Inside, Gregory ushered her into a private conference room, where several senior executives awaited nervously. "Dr. Carter," one of them began, rising to greet her. "On behalf of everyone here, I want to extend our sincerest apologies." Elena held up a hand, cutting him off. "Save the apologies," she said coolly. "Actions speak louder than words. Show me what you're going to do to fix this, not just for me, but for everyone who flies with you." The room fell silent as the executives exchanged uneasy glances. They had expected anger, perhaps even demands for compensation. What they hadn't anticipated was the steely determination in Elena's voice, or the challenge she posed to them. In that moment, they realized this wasn't just a PR crisis. It was a reckoning. And Dr. Elena Carter was ready to lead the charge. The conference room buzzed with tension as Dr. Elena Carter took her seat at the head of the table, flanked by executives who shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. The air was thick with unease, and the weight of what had transpired earlier that day hung over everyone like a storm cloud. Gregory Thompson stood nearby, clutching a folder of documents he hoped would somehow soften the blow. But Elena wasn't interested in paperwork or empty gestures. She wanted action. "Let's get one thing straight," she began, her voice steady but commanding. "What happened today wasn't just an isolated incident. It's a symptom of a much deeper problem within this company, a problem I intend to address starting now." She leaned forward slightly, her piercing gaze locking onto each executive in turn. Some avoided her eyes altogether, while others looked back hesitantly, unsure how to respond. Elena continued, "You may think this is about me being asked to leave first class, but it's not. It's about every passenger who has ever walked onto one of your planes and felt unwelcome because of their race, gender, religion, or appearance. It's about the flight attendants who are expected to smile through microaggressions and outright discrimination. And it's about the culture you've allowed to fester unchecked for far too long." One of the executives cleared his throat, nervously. "Dr. Carter, we understand your concerns and we're committed to making changes." "Stop right there," Elena interrupted sharply. "I don't want platitudes. I want accountability. Tell me, how many complaints have you received about discriminatory behavior from passengers or staff? How many times have employees reported feeling unsafe or disrespected? Do you even track that data?" The room fell silent. No one answered. Elena didn't need them to. The lack of response spoke volumes. She sighed deeply, shaking her head. "This isn't just negligence, it's complicity. And if you want to keep running this airline under my ownership, things are going to change. Dramatically." With that, she pulled out her phone and played a video clip she'd saved earlier. It was footage captured by passengers on the plane, showing the confrontation between her and the flight attendant. The shaky camera work did little to diminish the impact of the scene. The executives watched in stunned silence as Elena calmly asserted her rights, only to be met with hostility and disbelief. When the clip ended, no one dared to speak. Elena set the phone down gently on the table. This is what the world saw today. Millions of people watched this unfold online. They're outraged, not just for me, but for themselves, because they know it could have been them. So tell me, what are you going to do about it? Finally, one of the senior vice presidents found the courage to break the silence. "We'll implement mandatory diversity training for all employees," he offered tentatively, "and review our policies to ensure incidents like this never happen again." Elena raised an eyebrow. That's a start, but it's not enough. Training sessions are meaningless unless they're backed by real consequences. From now on, any employee found engaging in discriminatory behavior will face immediate termination. No exceptions. Zero tolerance. Another executive chimed in, cautiously. But Dr. Carter, enforcing such strict measures might alienate some of our more traditional customers. Elena's expression hardened. Then let them go elsewhere. If someone can't respect basic human dignity, they don't belong on my airline. Period. Her words sent a ripple through the room. Some executives exchanged worried glances, clearly uneasy about the potential fallout. Others nodded slowly, beginning to grasp the magnitude of Elena's vision. This wasn't just about damage control. It was about transforming the airline into something greater than it had ever been. To drive her point home, Elena outlined a series of sweeping reforms. First, she demanded the creation of a diversity and inclusion task force, composed of employees from every level of the organization. Their job would be to identify systemic issues and propose solutions. Second, she called for transparent reporting mechanisms, allowing passengers and staff to report incidents without fear of retaliation. Third, she insisted on promoting leaders who reflected the diversity of the communities the airline served. As she spoke, her passion became infectious. Even those initially resistant to her ideas couldn't help but feel inspired by her determination. By the end of the meeting, several executives had volunteered to take charge of implementing her directives, eager to prove their commitment to change. But not everyone was on board. One particularly stubborn board member, a man named Richard Langston, pushed back against Elena's proposals. These changes are drastic, he argued. They'll disrupt operations and hurt morale. We can't afford to alienate seasoned employees who've been with us for decades. Elena fixed him with a steely glare. If those seasoned employees are unwilling to adapt to a more inclusive workplace, then yes, we absolutely can afford to lose them. Because the alternative is losing our integrity, and that's something I won't compromise on. Langston opened his mouth to protest further, but before he could say another word, Gregory stepped in. Richard, perhaps, it's time we reconsider our priorities. Dr. Carter has made her expectations clear. If we fail to meet them, the consequences will be severe, for all of us. Realizing he was outnumbered, Langston reluctantly backed down. Still seething, he muttered something under his breath and stormed out of the room. Moments later, 2 other executives followed suit, resigning on the spot rather than face the upheaval Elena's reforms promised. For a brief moment, the remaining team sat in stunned silence. Then Elena stood up, signaling the end of the meeting. "Thank you for listening," she said, her tone softer but still resolute. "Change won't happen overnight, but it will happen. Together we can build an airline that doesn't just transport people, it empowers them. Let's get to work." As the executives filed out of the room, many of them couldn't shake the feeling that they had witnessed history in the making. For years, the airline had operated under outdated norms and unspoken biases. Now, thanks to Elena's unwavering resolve, it was poised to become a beacon of progress and inclusivity. Outside the building, reporters clamored for statements, their cameras flashing as Elena emerged. She paused briefly, addressing the crowd with poise and purpose. "Today we begin a new chapter," she declared. "A chapter defined by respect, equality, and opportunity for all. Stay tuned, because the best is yet to come." Her words echoed across headlines and social media feeds, reigniting conversations about representation and justice. For Elena, this wasn't just about fixing an airline. It was about proving that true leadership meant standing up for what was right, even when it was hard, and she was just getting started. In the weeks that followed the incident, Elena Carter became a household name. Her story had ignited a firestorm of discussions about race, privilege, and systemic bias, not just in aviation but across industries worldwide. News outlets couldn't get enough of her. Talk shows invited her for interviews, magazines featured her on their covers, and social media platforms buzzed with hashtags like "Fly with Elena" and "Respect for All." To many, she was more than a businesswoman. She was a symbol of resilience and empowerment. But Elena wasn't interested in fame for its own sake. She saw this as an opportunity, a chance to amplify voices that had long been silenced and push for real change. Instead of shying away from the spotlight, she leaned into it, using every platform she could find to advocate for justice and equality. Whether it was speaking at conferences, writing op-eds, or appearing on late-night television, she made sure her message was clear. Discrimination has no place in our society, and it's time to hold institutions accountable. One of her first major initiatives was launching Sky Without Limits, a program aimed at breaking down barriers for women and minorities in aviation. The initiative included scholarships for aspiring pilots, engineers, and aviation professionals from underrepresented communities. It also offered mentorship opportunities, connecting young talent with industry leaders who could guide them through their careers. Elena knew firsthand how isolating it could feel to be the only person of color, or the only woman, in a room full of skeptics. Through Sky Without Limits, she hoped to create a pipeline of diverse talent that would reshape the future of aviation. Her efforts didn't stop there. Back at the airline, employees began noticing subtle but meaningful shifts in the workplace culture. New posters featuring diverse faces adorned break rooms and hallways, accompanied by messages celebrating inclusivity and belonging. Training sessions became less about ticking boxes and more about fostering genuine understanding. Role-playing exercises allowed staff to step into each other's shoes, helping them see the impact of their words and actions. Slowly but surely, conversations around bias and privilege started happening organically, not because they were forced, but because people genuinely wanted to learn. Passengers noticed the changes too. On flights, announcements emphasized respect and kindness, reminding everyone aboard that they were part of a shared journey. Flight attendants wore updated uniforms designed collaboratively with input from employees of different backgrounds. These small yet significant updates sent a powerful message. This was an airline that valued individuality and celebrated diversity. Despite these positive developments, not everything went smoothly. Some longtime employees struggled to adapt to the new policies, grumbling about political correctness or claiming the reforms were unnecessary. A handful even quit, unwilling to embrace the evolving culture. But for every dissenting voice, there were dozens more who welcomed the changes with open arms. Many employees expressed gratitude for finally feeling seen and heard after years of being overlooked. "It's like a weight has been lifted," one flight attendant told Elena during a town hall meeting. "For so long I felt like I had to shrink myself to fit in. Now I feel like I can show up fully as myself and still belong." Elena smiled warmly at the comment, knowing exactly what the woman meant. She often reflected on her own journey, remembering the countless times she'd faced doubt and dismissal simply because of how she looked or sounded. Those experiences had shaped her, teaching her the importance of perseverance and self-belief. Now seeing others find strength in their identities brought her immense joy. As months passed, Elena decided to take a personal flight on one of her refurbished planes, a symbolic gesture to mark the progress made since the fateful day she'd been removed from first class. This time, however, the experience was worlds apart. As she boarded the aircraft, she was greeted by smiles and warm welcomes from the crew. Passengers nodded respectfully, some even approaching her to express admiration for her work. One elderly man shook her hand and said, "You've given me hope, Dr. Carter. Hope that things can actually change." The flight itself was smooth and uneventful, but for Elena, it carried profound meaning. Sitting in her seat, she glanced around the cabin, taking in the sight of passengers from all walks of life coexisting peacefully. Children laughed, couples whispered sweet nothings, and solo travelers immersed themselves in books or music. It was a reminder of why she had fought so hard, to ensure that everyone, regardless of background, could feel safe and respected while traveling. During the journey, Elena found herself reflecting on how far she'd come, not just professionally, but personally. Owning an airline hadn't been part of her original plan. Growing up, she had dreamed of becoming a doctor, driven by a desire to heal and help others. And though she had achieved that dream, Earning accolades as a surgeon and researcher, she eventually realized her impact could extend beyond hospital walls. By acquiring the struggling airline and transforming it into a force for good, she had discovered a new way to make a difference. Her thoughts drifted back to the day of the incident, the anger, the frustration, the disbelief. At the time, she had wondered if standing her ground was worth the trouble. But now, looking at the tangible results of her courage, she knew it had been. Every policy change, every scholarship awarded, every employee empowered, it all traced back to that moment, when she refused to back down. When the plane touched down in Los Angeles, Elena disembarked with a renewed sense of purpose. Reporters awaited her arrival, eager for sound bites and photo ops. But instead of focusing on herself, she turned the attention outward. "This isn't my victory," she told them. "It belongs to everyone who has ever dared to challenge the status quo. Together, we're proving that change is possible." Her words resonated deeply, sparking renewed calls for accountability and reform in other sectors. Companies began reaching out to Elena, asking for advice on implementing similar initiatives within their organizations. Community groups invited her to speak at events, hoping to inspire others to follow in her footsteps. Even schools started incorporating her story into lesson plans, teaching students about resilience, leadership, and the power of standing up for what's right. Through it all, Elena remained grounded, never losing sight of her ultimate goal, creating a world where no one had to fight twice as hard to prove they belonged. She knew the road ahead wouldn't always be easy. There would still be resistance, setbacks, and moments of doubt. But she also knew she wasn't alone. Countless people stood beside her, ready to carry the torch and continue the fight, and so as she walked away from the tarmac that day, Elena felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The battle wasn't over, but she had planted seeds of change that would grow for generations to come. For someone who had once been told she didn't belong, she had become a beacon of belonging, not just for herself but for everyone who dared to dream bigger. Months turned into years, and Elena Carter's airline soared to unprecedented heights, literally and figuratively. What had once been a struggling carrier on the brink of collapse was now one of the most respected names in aviation. Passengers flocked to book flights not just for convenience or comfort, but because they trusted the brand to treat them with dignity and respect. The airline's reputation as a champion of inclusivity became its defining feature, setting it apart from competitors who scrambled to catch up. For Elena, this transformation wasn't just about numbers or profits. It was about proving that businesses could thrive while doing good. Every decision she made reinforced her vision, elevating humanity through travel. From redesigned cabins featuring ergonomic seating for passengers of all sizes to menus crafted by chefs from diverse culinary traditions, every detail reflected her commitment to making everyone feel valued. Even the advertisements told stories of connection and belonging, showcasing families reuniting, friends exploring new cultures, and dreamers pursuing opportunities far from home. But perhaps the most remarkable shift was within the company itself. Employees at every level embraced the new culture Elena had cultivated. Pilots shared stories of mentoring young aviators through Sky Without Limits. Flight attendants took pride in creating welcoming environments for nervous travelers, and ground staff worked tirelessly to ensure smooth journeys for passengers with disabilities. It wasn't uncommon to hear employees refer to the airline as their second family, a testament to the sense of community Elena had fostered. One day, Elena decided to take another personal flight, a deliberate choice to remind herself of how far things had come since the incident that changed everything. As she walked down the jet bridge toward the plane, memories flooded back. The sting of being judged by her appearance, the frustration of fighting against prejudice, and the quiet determination that had fueled her resolve. This time, however, there was no tension, no hostility, just smiles and warm greetings from the crew. The flight attendant leading the boarding process recognized her immediately. "Dr. Carter, welcome aboard," she exclaimed, beaming. "It's such an honor to have you here." Elena returned the smile warmly. "Thank you. I'm looking forward to experiencing the changes firsthand." Once seated, she settled into her familiar routine of observing the cabin dynamics. Flight attendants moved gracefully between rows, offering assistance with genuine enthusiasm. Passengers chatted amiably, sharing snacks and stories across aisles. A toddler giggled as his mother helped him press buttons on the in-flight entertainment system, while an elderly couple held hands, gazing out the window at the tarmac below. These moments, though seemingly ordinary, carried extraordinary significance. They were proof that the airline had become more than just a mode of transportation. It was a space where people felt safe, seen, and connected. Midway through the flight, the captain's voice crackled over the intercom. "Good afternoon, everyone. This is your captain speaking. We're cruising at 35,000 feet and we expect smooth skies ahead." Before we continue, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge someone special on board today. Dr. Elena Carter, our CEO and the driving force behind the incredible changes we've seen in recent years. Dr. Carter, thank you for believing in us and inspiring us to be better every single day. The cabin erupted in applause, startling Elena momentarily. She glanced around, meeting the eyes of passengers nodding appreciatively. Some even gave her thumbs up or whispered words of encouragement. For a brief moment, she felt overwhelmed, not by embarrassment, but by gratitude. All the late nights, tough decisions, and moments of doubt had led to this, a tangible impact on countless lives. After landing, Elena disembarked with a renewed sense of clarity. While the airline had achieved remarkable success, she understood that true progress wasn't measured solely by accolades or financial gains. It was reflected in the stories of individuals whose lives had been touched along the way. Take Maria Gonzalez, for instance, a former scholarship recipient from Sky Without Limits who now flew commercial routes as a licensed pilot. Or James Patel, a mechanic inspired by Elena's leadership to pursue management training and rise through the ranks. Their achievements were testaments to the ripple effect of her efforts. As news of the airline's success spread, other industries began taking notice. Executives from tech companies, retail chains, and healthcare organizations reached out to Elena, eager to learn how they could implement similar reforms. She welcomed these conversations, hosting workshops and panel discussions to share insights and strategies. Her philosophy was simple: start with empathy, prioritize action over rhetoric, and remain steadfast in the face of resistance. Her influence extended beyond corporate boardrooms. Schools named scholarships after her, museums featured exhibits celebrating her contributions, and young entrepreneurs looked up to her as proof that success didn't have to come at the expense of integrity. Elena often visited classrooms and community centers, encouraging students to dream boldly and embrace their unique identities. Success isn't about fitting into someone else's mold, she would tell them. It's about breaking barriers and creating spaces where others can thrive too. Despite her growing fame, Elena remained deeply grounded. She surrounded herself with a tight-knit circle of friends and mentors who kept her humble and reminded her of her roots. On weekends, she volunteered at local shelters, cooking meals or tutoring children in need. To her, giving back wasn't optional, it was essential. After all, she knew firsthand what it meant to struggle and overcome adversity. By now, Elena had become a global icon, not just for her business acumen, but for her unwavering dedication to justice and equality. Yet she never lost sight of why she started this journey in the first place: to challenge assumptions, dismantle biases, and create a world where everyone belonged. Whether addressing audiences of thousands or chatting with a single passenger, during a layover she carried the same message: if I can rise above, so can you. As she stood on stage at an international conference one evening, delivering a keynote speech to thunderous applause, Elena paused to soak in the moment. Looking out at the sea of faces, each one filled with hope and ambition, she realized something profound. This wasn't just her story anymore. It belonged to anyone who dared to challenge the status quo, break free from limitations, and build bridges instead of walls. And with that realization, she smiled, knowing the best was yet to come. Years rolled by, and Dr. Elena Carter's legacy continued to grow, not just within the airline industry but across the globe. Her airline had become synonymous with progress, inclusivity, and innovation, a shining example of what could be achieved when leadership prioritized humanity over profit. But for Elena, the true measure of success wasn't in the accolades or market share. It was in the lives transformed and the barriers broken down. She often said, "An airplane doesn't just carry passengers, it carries dreams. And if we can make those dreams a little lighter to carry, then we've done our job." The airline she once rescued from obscurity now stood as a beacon of hope for underrepresented communities worldwide. Pilots, engineers, and cabin crew from diverse backgrounds filled its ranks, proving that talent knows no boundaries. Schools and universities partnered with the company to offer internships and training programs, ensuring that young people from marginalized groups had pathways into careers they might never have imagined possible. Every new hire brought fresh energy and perspective, further enriching the culture Elena had worked so hard to build. Her impact stretched far beyond aviation. The principles she championed, respect, equity, and empowerment, resonated deeply in other industries too. Tech giants adopted her model of zero-tolerance policies for discrimination, while retail chains revamped their hiring practices to prioritize diversity. Even Hollywood took note, producing documentaries and films inspired by her journey. One such project, titled Sky Without Limits, became an international sensation, bringing her story to audiences who might otherwise never have heard it. Elena herself remained as active as ever, traveling the world to speak at conferences, mentor aspiring leaders, and advocate for systemic change. Her speeches were always heartfelt and unscripted, drawing from personal experiences to inspire action. "When I was growing up," she would say, "I rarely saw faces like mine in positions of power. That lack of representation told me, even if unintentionally, that my dreams were out of reach. Today, I want to ensure that no child feels that way. Not about flying planes, running companies, or leading nations." Despite her global influence, Elena stayed connected to the grassroots movements that had shaped her early activism. She frequently visited underserved neighborhoods, rolling up her sleeves to help rebuild schools, organize career fairs, and fund scholarships. On one occasion, she spent an entire weekend painting murals with local artists in a community center. When someone asked why she bothered with such hands-on work despite her busy schedule, she simply replied, "Change starts on the ground. If I lose touch with the people I'm fighting for, then I've failed." Her humility and authenticity endeared her to millions. People admired her not because she was perfect, far from it, but because she was real. She openly acknowledged her struggles, sharing stories of self-doubt and setbacks to remind others that perseverance mattered more than perfection. In interviews, she laughed about how terrified she'd been stepping onto that first-class flight all those years ago, unsure if standing her ground would cost her everything. "But sometimes," she added, "you have to risk it all to show the world and yourself that you're worth it." As her fame grew, so did the recognition she received. Awards poured in from every corner: humanitarian honors, lifetime achievement, accolades, and even a Nobel Peace Prize nomination for her contributions to social justice. Yet none of these trophies meant as much to her as the handwritten letters she received from strangers whose lives she had touched. A single mother wrote to thank her for providing a scholarship that allowed her daughter to pursue engineering. A former inmate expressed gratitude for a second chance through the airline's Rehabilitation to Employment program. Each note reinforced her belief that small actions could spark monumental change. One particularly memorable moment came during a charity gala in New York. As Elena accepted an award for excellence in leadership, a young girl named Amara approached the stage. Clutching a drawing of an airplane in one hand and a microphone in the other, she shyly addressed the crowd. "Dr. Carter," she began, her voice trembling but determined, "you showed me that I can fly planes someday, even though everyone tells me girls like me don't belong in the sky." The room erupted in applause as tears welled up in Elena's eyes. She knelt down to hug Amara, whispering, "You'll soar higher than anyone expects. Just keep believing in yourself." By this point, Elena had become more than a businesswoman or activist. She was a symbol of possibility. Museums dedicated exhibits to her life's work, chronicling her rise from a small-town doctor to a global changemaker. Books were written about her philosophy, analyzing how she balanced ambition with compassion. Young entrepreneurs emulated her approach, building companies rooted in purpose rather than profit. Even political leaders sought her counsel, recognizing the wisdom she brought to conversations about equality and inclusion. Yet amidst all the fanfare, Elena never forgot where she came from, or the lessons she'd learned along the way. She often reflected on the day she'd been removed from that first-class cabin, remembering the anger and frustration that had fueled her determination. That painful experience had taught her something invaluable. Adversity isn't the end. It's the beginning. It forces us to dig deeper, dream bigger, and fight harder for what we believe in. Now, as she prepared to step back from day-to-day operations at the airline, Elena felt a profound sense of fulfillment. She knew the company would continue to thrive under the capable leaders she had mentored. More importantly, she trusted that the values she had instilled, respect, integrity, and courage, would endure long after she was gone. Her final act as CEO was to establish the Elena Carter Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to funding education, healthcare, and community development projects around the world. "This isn't goodbye," she announced at the launch event. "It's hello to the next chapter, the next generation, and the endless possibilities ahead." In retirement, Elena returned to her roots, spending time with family and friends while continuing to support causes close to her heart. She wrote a memoir, titled Rising Above, chronicling her journey and offering advice to future trailblazers. The book became an instant bestseller, resonating with readers of all ages. Critics praised its honesty and vulnerability, calling it a roadmap for resilience. Looking back on her life, Elena realized she had accomplished far more than she ever thought possible. But what gave her the greatest joy was knowing she had paved the way for others to do the same. Whether it was a young pilot taking off for her first solo flight, a student graduating thanks to a scholarship, or a passenger boarding a plane without fear of judgment, Elena saw pieces of herself in each of them. They were living proof that change was possible and contagious. On her 70th birthday, surrounded by loved ones, Elena made a quiet vow to herself to spend the rest of her days nurturing the seeds she had planted. Because for someone who had once been told she didn't belong, she had become a force of belonging, not just for herself, but for everyone who dared to dream bigger. And as she blew out the candles on her cake, she whispered a single wish. May the skies always be limitless.